All right.
We are here, and it is now. It is the UFC 303 Fight IQ podcast. We will take a look at every fight on the slate with the new main event. Well, the sort of new main event, not the expected main event, but a decent one nonetheless. It is the second fight between Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka for the light heavyweight title. As I said, we will break down every fight on the card with my trusty compadres here. It is Drake, never a burden at all, and also Joe Sun Tzu. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Great. So I got to apologize for two things. First, this is a backup computer. So if the sound quality isn't coming in well, if you're hearing some static, I do apologize for that. It could not be helped. And second, if we lose our producer, um, mainly Chris, because you hear a knock on the door and it's the police, it's because he's probably hiding a kidnapped child in his beard. So we may actually end up having some issues as far as that goes. But other than that, this is not the card I hoped it would be, but there are some entertaining fights, and I've come to believe that a good card is a card I make money on. So I did really well last week with Volkov. The week before, and I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. The week before, the worst thing that could possibly happen happened to me. In the main event with Alex Perez and Teixeira, I had Teixeira by sub, and I had Perez to win by decision. Perez was ahead in first round on all judges' scorecards, and they did not call that a submission. They called it a knockout because he tapped when his leg got injured. So that was the worst possible way for a main event to end, and it essentially, sent my night into a tailspin. But other than that, we'll turn it over to Drake.
Yep. Hopefully, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, hopefully, a better night this week. Drake, how do you feel about this card? I know we talked about it a little before we came on the air. Underdogs that I think a lot of people will be on, maybe some that not many will be on. But what do you think of the card as a whole?
I think so. For me, this is a heavily favorited card. I'm not high on a lot of dogs, but we got 13 fights, and I'd say 11 of them, maybe 12, are exciting and worth a damn. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely looking forward to the main event and the co-main as well, because I'm a big Lopez fan.
Yeah, absolutely. As am I, but we will get there. The beard, and thank you so much, Robert. I made a vow that I wouldn't shave until Conor McGregor got back in the cage. We were very close to shaving it, and now who knows when I'll get another chance. So I hope you all like the beard. It looks like it is here to stay. But as I said, we will get on to the card and analyzing and breaking down all that good stuff. But before we do, I just want to say, do a 10-day free trial, rotowire.com. Go to rotowire.com/free. That's rotowire.com/free. No credit card required. 10 days, all our premium content. Football season coming up, baseball season in full swing, MMA as always, all that good stuff. So www.com, rotowire.com/free for that 10-day free trial. And now we are going to start breaking down the card. With the first fight on the slate here, it is Ricky Simone at 8,900 taking on Venicius Oliveira at 7,300. The line on this fight, Simone at minus 250, Venicius de Oliveira plus 200. And I feel like there are more than a few favorites like this on this card where I feel like they should be priced a little higher. I really like Simone here under 9K. Hasn't had the best scores of late, so maybe that's why. But Venicius Oliveira, before he hit that big flying knee that we all rave about for his debut against Lepage, he was getting taken down pretty regularly in that fight. Lepage got really tired. Oliveira was able to just sort of hit the flying knee on an opponent who couldn't be in there anymore. And no matter what you want to say about Ricky Simone's fighting style, he doesn't get tired. That's one of his main attributes. I think he's going to be able to go forever with the wrestling. And if Oliveira can't stop it, it's just going to be a bunch of rinse and repeats, a bunch of points. I really like Ricky Simone at below 9,000 here. I think he's got to be a mainstay on the first fight. But we will see what these guys think, and we will start it off with Joe this week. Joe, how do you see this fight?
Did you give the salaries?
Yes, Joe. I gave salary, and I said he was under 9K like five times. But
I'm
go
kidding.
ahead.
I'm kidding. Okay, so my favorite type of fighters are fighters who use cardio as a weapon, which is why I'm such a huge Merab fan. I just love those type of fighters. I mean, it's like my favorite fight, I think, in recent memory was Merab versus Peter Yan. I mean, you could just see the essence drain from Jan's face when Merab just repeatedly took him down. It was such a pleasure to watch. And, Simone is pretty similar. I mean, I like Simone a lot in this fight. I think it could be the first round. Maybe it could be a little interesting. But I really do like Simone. Honestly, this is pretty much, I mean, I don't think the UFC would cut him, but he's coming off of 2 losses, right? So this would pretty much be a must-win fight for him. So I like Simone a lot. I think, the problem with this card in a nutshell is you got one fighter at 9.8K. When was the last time we saw a fighter priced that high? I can't even remember seeing a fighter priced at 9.8K. So if you're going to play that fighter, and honestly, I don't think you have to play him in, you're right, Joe. I don't think we have to play him in GPPs, but if you are going to play him, you're going to have to get a little selective with how you build the rest of your lineup. So I don't think you need to play him, by the way, unless you're doing cash. But yeah, let's go Simone all the way.
I think the last time we saw someone like this, and there might have been one that snuck in either before or after this, but I think it was probably a cyborg fight, maybe against Kalinskaya. Maybe that was even a little less. Maybe that was only 97, but I think we got close there. But in any event, Drake, how do you see the curtain opener here?
We're going to make it 3 for 3. I don't think Oliveira has much of a chance in this fight unless he keeps it on the feet. And against Simone, I don't think he's going to be able to. I think exactly what Joey commented earlier. It's going to be takedown city, and that weaponized cardio is just going to carry him to a 100 point plus win.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say there. Simone, hard to hurt too, and hard to finish. And I think that's another thing. Even if he does have some kind of rough spots, as Joe alluded to, I think he pulls it out. But we will then go ahead on to the next fight, which is Seruya at 9,300 taking on Carlos Hernandez at 6,900. The line in this fight, minus 450 for Seruya, plus 350 for Carlos Hernandez. Seruya, a guy we saw come through the Road to UFC series, Pancratian fighter, and fights as you would expect a Pancratian fighter to fight. Just sort of, very chaotic, very going for his takedowns, very much willing to, force the scramble because he's confident he's going to come out on top. I love those fighters because they're guaranteed action, guaranteed point scores. And Carlos Hernandez, kind of just like a kickboxer who's going to accept the tempo and range of his opponent. I think Seruya is going to be able to lead the dance here. I think we've seen Hernandez have some trouble with wrestlers before. So I really think this is kind of an easy pick. And Carlos Hernandez, not really a finisher either. So I really think this is kind of an easy one as well. Stacking up the first 2 favorites here, as Drake said earlier, kind of hard to come up with dogs, although we'll get to that later. But I think this is an easy 1-2 of the first 2 fights, favorites across that board. But we'll go with Drake to see if he has any surprises. Drake, how do you see the second fight?
No, you pretty much nailed it. I love Seruya in this fight. Carlos Hernandez, his most recent fight was against another top Japanese prospect in Tatsuro Taira, and we all saw how that went. I think Seruya has a very similar path to the top 15 that Taira took. So I really like this kid. He really impressed me on the road to UFC, and I'm looking forward to see what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we're going to get much dissension in these first 2, but let's check and find out. Joe, how do you see this one?
Yeah, so no dissension. It's just I don't know how much I love him on DraftKings. Sorry, we got this little private chat thing going. Yeah, so I don't know how much I love him in DraftKings. As a matter of fact, I would be tempted to play the over prop on the rounds in this fight because I think this fight might go deep. And if it goes deep, I don't expect that we're going to see a lot of stand-up scoring by the favorite here. Maybe he'll get some control time. If he could get his back, he can certainly finish him. But I could certainly see this going over. So for that reason, I don't think I love this on DraftKings. I haven't really, done all my builds yet. Obviously, it's 3 for 3 in terms of picking the winner. It's just I am not yet certain how this fight fits in. I really don't want much, if any, of the dog, but I'm not sure how much of the favorite I want either. So I haven't looked at ownership yet. At worst, or I should say at best, I'll be at even ownership. At worst, I'll maybe fade and take a. I did max out the Micro Millions $3 contest this week. It's 20,000 on top. So for $450, and again, I'm not making light of $450. It's a lot of money, but for $450, you could play 150 lineups and you have a shot at 20,000. And unless you do something stupid, worst case is you're not going to lose every single lineup. So you will get some of your money back, but it's a shot to win 20,000 for $450, which I like. So anyway, I'm not sure how much of this fight I'll have in DraftKings, but I like the favorite.
Yeah, I could see like a 95 to 100 score here, but I agree, especially with a lot of heavy favorites. I agree that you might not want to have too much, but again, as I said, I like the wrestlers who kind of get a little crazy, get a little frantic, and could be in line for a big score, but I do understand the hesitation. But right now, we will go. For some reason, I don't think we're going to disagree too much here either, but let's see. It is Martin Buday at 9,100 taking on Andre Arlovski at 7,100. The line on this fight, Buday at minus 250, Arlovski at plus 200. And yes, Andre Arlovski is still fighting. And yes, in the very specific matchup, the speed that he still has as a heavyweight and his jab can get him some wins. But generally, what happens in matchups like these are it's a nip and tuck kickboxing match, and the opponent wins. And I'm thinking of the Collier fight. I'm thinking of a bunch of other ones. I think this is going to pretty much be the same kind of thing. Arlovski, for all about his chin, knocked out once in his last 11 fights. I think he's fine. And I don't see Buday as that much of a knockout artist anyway. Buday can be a little bit of a grappler, a little bit of a wrestler. Arlovski's been pretty good with that as well. So I think this is going to be just that, a nip-tuck kickboxing match, and Buday is going to win it. And for that reason, I really don't want any of this fight anywhere. I think usually it's dog or pass, but this one's just pass or pass. Just pass. So the pick is going to be Buday in a closely contested kickboxing match, but I hate it. And I think with the facial expressions, I'm going to get some agreement here, but let's see. Drake, how do you see this one?
Like I commented in our little chat there, I think this is just a snooze fest. This is one of the fights that I want absolutely no part of. I don't expect much action at all. Buday should win just purely based on volume. Arlovski makes every fight that he's in now just so boring. This is one of those fights, as Joey would say on our show, to go get your snacks and make sure that you get your bathroom break in and then come back and enjoy the rest of the fights. But I do have Buday ever so slightly.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good one to go do whatever you have to do, and then come back. And you know what? If you don't end up going back and watching it again, you won't miss that much. So it's all good. But Joe, do you have a radically different take here? I can't imagine, but let's hear it.
No, I mean my I hate Buday at this price. I mean, he's only scored over 100 points once. This is the most expensive he's ever been at 9.1K. On the other side, Arlo is coming off 3 losses. De Lima, Mays, and Cortez Acosta. In those 3 fights, he scored a whopping 1, 10, and 23.2 points. His last win was against Fat Jake. He scored 69 points in a win. So I don't want any side. I don't want either side of this fight. I will play some Buday because he did knock out. He's coming off a knockout, a pretty brutal knockout where he only scored like 4.8 DraftKings points. But he did put up 119 or so against Parisian in the fight before that. So as a pure contrarian play, I might have some shares in my $153 lineups. Excuse me, of Buday, and see if maybe, this is the fight that Arlo's chin, finally goes and we get a finish. And I think he's going to be very low owned. So as a contrarian play, I'll play some Buday. I don't like any Arlovski because I don't see him, winning by finish. A way to play this fight might be like to bet like fight goes to decision or, some kind of prop like that if you really want to bet this fight. But I don't love it for DraftKings. It's purely contrarian on the Buday side, and I don't want any of Arlo.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Maybe a little bit of if his chin does blow up, like you said, but otherwise, I think Drake pretty well mapped out how this fight's going to go, and it's going to make you not want to watch the card anymore and just get to the next fight. And I think we've all been there, and we're all going to go to the next fight, which is Jillian Robertson at 8,700 taking on Michelle Waterson Gomez at 7,500. Line on this fight. Robertson could be had at minus 180 and Waterson Gomez plus 150. And another favorite I really like because another favorite below 9,000 that I think has the chance to score a lot of points. Waterson always been undersized. The UFC does not have an atomweight division. They're not going to have an atomweight division, so she will always be undersized. Jillian Robertson struggles when she can't get takedowns. I don't think that's going to be an issue here. In fact, I think that Waterson will probably foolishly tie up and look for the head and arm throw that she does at least once a fight. So, Waterson might get off with her speed early and land some strikes, but I think ultimately Robertson's going to get this to the ground. And when she does, she's a really good control grappler, a really good top grappler, and a really good submission hunter. And I think all 3 of those things are bad news for Waterson. I really like Jillian Robertson here at 8,700, and that's going to be my 3 for 3 on the favorites here. But let's see if the boys have any other thoughts. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, so look, I love like Waterson for several reasons. Her Thai descent, her, the way she looked when she was 105. She's coming off of 4 losses. She's 1-5 in her last 6 UFC fights. Actually, I should say 1-6. That's right. 1-6 in her last 7 UFC fights. I have to believe that, she loses here, which I fully expect her to. She'll go home. She's 37 or 38. Jillian's about a decade younger. My knock on Jillian has always been that she's not very good at adapting, and if the fight isn't going her way, she tends to get really discouraged and give up. But I really do like her in this spot. I think this is a really good spot for her against Waterson. Now, people are going to look at Waterson, they're going to look at the competition, and they're going to say, wow, she's fought really good competition. You can argue that Jillian isn't better than any of the last 5 or 6 fighters that Waterson has fought, and that's probably true. But, I think Jillian is just better now, and I think she will get a takedown, and if she gets the takedown, I think she can cause some damage to Waterson. I think as a stand-up fight, I do think Waterson might even have a slight edge in stand-up, as hard as that is to believe, where you've got a 10-age discrepancy. Jillian has never been a great striker, but she's got some nasty ground and pound. I could see her going for a submission. I can see her definitely getting the fight to the ground. So I like her price point. I am definitely going to be above market on Jillian. I'll be below market on Waterson, and like hopefully she'll like maybe go into some other organization. I think she might be cut or voluntarily retire after this fight because only females and like attractive females does the UFC keep around after having this many losses. I mean, seriously, like how many losses did Caitlin Curran have before the UFC cut her? So like, yeah, attractive females last longer than any other type of fighter in the UFC, and it's not right. I understand it, but it's not right. So I think after this, the UFC is going to say like, look, don't make us cut you, just like retire. And she gets a pretty decent amount of money given all the fights she's had in the UFC and her what she gets from the sponsor. So I'm going to take Jillian Robinson here. I like her quite a bit on DraftKings. I think she has the capability of putting up a really good score.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that when she does get her work done, she gets her work done quickly. She's got quite a few first-round finishes there. And she can look at his sorts in the right matchup, but I don't even if Waterson Gomez gets ahead in the striking, I don't think it's really gonna, deter her. Waterson Gomez certainly not a knockout threat. So but we are putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Maybe Drake has this vaunted underdog play. What do you think, Drake?
Absolutely not. I'm probably a bit higher on Robertson than most, simply for the reason that if Waterson goes for the takedown, which she might, it's Jillian's game. If Jillian gets the takedown, it's Jillian's game. Waterson Gomez, I mean, she's got a slight advantage in striking, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of striking in this fight. And if that takedown happens in the first 2 rounds when they're still somewhat dry, I don't see Michelle getting away from it. So I got Robertson by submission.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that these favorites have been fairly straightforward. There is the close-up on my face. Hopefully that levels out soon enough. There we go. And but hopefully we will get underdog. No, not in this fight, but maybe the next one. It is Payton Talbott at 9,800 taking on Yanis Ghemmouri at 6,400. The line on this fight is going to be as big as you expect. It is minus 2,000 for Talbot and plus 1,100 for Ghemmouri. And when the line is that big, what do you even say about the fight? It would be interesting if one of us had, an underdog pull here, but you can't really. I mean, I had some questions about Talbot in the last fight. Is he going to get tired? What's he going to do when his opponent didn't go away? And he faced a really tough guy, Cameron Simone, who took all his best shots, and then he offered up more best shots. So I'm not worried about any of that anymore. I really like Talbot. Ghemmouri is sort of just like this stationary kickboxer who waits on his opponent, and I really just think he's going to get swallowed up here. I don't think there's too much to say except for the price point, which is 98. And for that reason, I don't think you should have too much of this fight. Could he get like a 60-second bonus and then really drop it on you? I suppose anything is possible, but to me, there's just too many favorites with good prices. Some of them which we've already went over to be on 9,800. So that's my take on the pricing, which I think is going to dominate the conversation here. So let's see what the guys have to say about that. Drake, how do you see this one?
Like you said, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's a reason he's 9,800 on DraftKings, and there's a reason that he's last I saw, almost a minus 2,000, favorite betting wise. I fully expect Talbot to win this fight by knockout, but I do think, given how the UFC has been over the last few cards, it would also not surprise me if Ghemmouri somehow got a submission in this fight. His submission odds are absolutely ridiculous. I think all of them are over plus 5,000, so it's just something to think about. But yeah, I do have Talbot.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Joe, what about you? You have any insights, price wise or otherwise?
Nothing enlightening here. I mean, 9.8K though. You better get. You got to get over 100. I mean, you got to actually you probably want like 110, which is only 11x.
Yeah.
right? And the way that these pools have been going recently, you probably want 12 to 13x, which means a first round finish within the first minute or a ton of striking volume over 3 rounds. And I don't know that I see either. I mean, the likelihood of a first round finish is probably greater than, than volume over 3 rounds. But is he going to finish him in the first minute and get 125 points, get a takedown, get 90, get the 25-point bonus? That's really what you need almost to make this pay off. I mean, if you're at 110 at 11x and you want to get to 12x, that's 122. Yeah. So, I'm just saying that in GPPs, this is a really risky play because he could look good and he could win and still not be optimal. So, remember, we're not playing who's going to win. We're playing who's going to be optimal. So, at 9.8K, everything has to go right for him to score enough to make it worthwhile, or it just has to be a dead favorite-filled card, where you're not getting a lot of finishes and it's relatively low scoring. Otherwise, I wouldn't push the lock button and put this guy in all your lineups. I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah, it kind of is the case that, I don't want to say he would need the quick win bonus to pay himself off. That's not quite true, but it does kind of feel like that. It kind of feels like if you have Payton Talbott and it goes below the 4 minute mark, you really you're not feeling too good. So I think that all of that's pretty straightforward, but I think as a cash play, absolutely probably get you your 90 to 95, but 98 is quite the salary there. But we will move on here, and the next fight is Charles Jourdain at 8,300 taking on Gene Silva at 7,900. Gene Silva did miss weight today, I believe by 2 pounds, came in 147.5. So that is something to take into account there. Line on this fight, Jourdain minus 120, Gene Silva plus 100. And this is an interesting fight. I like Gene Silva. He's one of these guys, very muscled up, very athletic, very quick, very powerful, kind of a one strike at a time guy, just looking to blitz you and take you out. And Jourdain is sort of the more rangy kickboxer who's gonna fight longer and fight behind the jab. So it's kind of a styles clash in that sense. Gene Silva could look for some takedowns here, but Charles Jourdain pretty good on the ground as well, as we've seen. I'm going to give it to Jourdain here. I think he can force Silva to have the fight at his speed rather than the other way around. I think Silva's going to be forced into a slower kind of rangy fight where his one at a time strikes aren't going to do all that well. So my pick is Jourdain here. And I don't necessarily see it as a volume field fight either, just because I think he's going to try to slow down the pace, as I said. But let's see how the boys feel about it. I think we're going to Joe first. Joe, what do you see about this one?
Yeah, so I've been kind of waffling back and forth with this fight. Earlier in the week, excuse me. Earlier in the week, I really liked Jourdain, and he opened it, I think, minus 200. Or something really crazy like that. And I liked them a lot at these odds. And to a certain extent, I still do. The line value is great on Jourdain. But I'm trying to look at what did people see in Silva. Now, 2 things. One is, after last week's performance, I guess the knockout win over Wilson doesn't look so bad. Looks better than it would have been, otherwise. The other thing is he arguably fights at one of the hottest camps right now, the Fighting Nerds camp with Cal Barrio.
Don't steal my take.
What was that?
I said, don't steal my take.
Oh, that was your take? Sorry. We didn't talk about this prior. But he's at the Fighting Nerds, which I like. Missing weight by 2.5 pounds or 2 pounds? Chris?
147.5, so 2.5.
Okay, so 1.5 pounds he actually missed weight by.
Yeah.
That typically means you tried to cut. I did not see weigh-ins. I don't know what he looked like. on the scale. You said he's a muscled up guy. Wow. I've been kind of going back and forth. I mean, I'm gonna have both sides here. I'm gonna play both sides. I like the narrative about the camp. Missing weight by 1.5 pounds. I usually like to see fighters miss weight by more. The other part of it is Jourdain just looked like dog shit in his last fight against Woodson at home. Like a split decision when honestly it wasn't even a split. I mean, Woodson clearly won that fight. I think the split decision was the home cooking, the fact that it even went to split. But he did not look good. And then you look at his prior fights, he looked really good. Like he puts the volume on you. He looks like he developed somewhat of a ground game. I think my concern here is that Wilson can take him down and do some damage. And that's my concern. Like, again, weight cut aside, narrative aside. Oh, shit. I guess I'll stick with my Jourdain pick. I know that's the pick I gave Jake. I'll stick with that pick. But honestly, I'm a lot lukewarmer on this pick now than I was earlier in the week. And I'll probably be pretty even weighted on this fight for DraftKings.
Yeah. I think we can sort of give him a pass for that last fight. I mean, he just couldn't find the lanky opponent there. I don't think that's going to be the issue here, but I get kind of the concern of just not being able to like track your opponent down and letting them just circle.
Well, here's one more point, Chris. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
one more point is his path to victory last fight was chopping down Woodson's legs.
Yeah.
And he did not do that. And again, I hate to be a plagiarizer, so I'll give props. Dog or pass. Apparently, he's never left Quebec for any of his camps, right? Like, never. And I guess it's hard. Like, I'm not saying you have to camp hop to be a good fighter, but, like, generally speaking, like, spending your entire career in one camp, we're going to come into a fighter coming up, Feely, who's done that, and he's had very mixed success. But I don't know that Jourdain is evolving as much. I mean, maybe that one choke was a fluke. But, staying, kind of home and not traveling and not looking at other camps and, essentially being the same type of fighter now that you were, 5 fights ago, that's a concern.
All right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there is concerns about Jourdain. I haven't seen quite enough from Silva myself, but maybe Drake, maybe there's something to go along with that Fighting Nerds take. Drake, how do you see this one?
I have learned that you do not go against the Fighting Nerds.
All right.
There's a reason that they are all on the runs that they are. They all train together. They're always backing each other. They're in each other's corners. And, man, they are all phenomenal fighters. These guys, I will take against just about everybody at this point. Jourdain's takedown defense is pretty dreadful. And I like, even if Silva wants to come out and strike right away, which he probably will because he's got massive power, the second that he feels like he's in trouble, I expect him just to take this down to the mat, and Jourdain is a fish on his back half the time. So I love Silva in this one. He's actually, he's at 7,900, you said?
Was 7,900.
For me, it's him and then my other dog that just about everybody else is on. So I really like Silva. He's going to be a big piece of my lineups. I'll have some of Jourdain, but I'm going to be well up on Silva.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to like about him. I kind of get nervous, and also kind of get nervous. Like, I know he can wrestle, but if it does come to that point where he has to wrestle over and over again, does that blow his arms out? That's not really his game. But, there is definitely a lot to like about him. Athletic, powerful. So we will see how that one shakes down. And like you said, kind of a close fight and maybe one where there could be volume. So who you pick there could be kind of a big swing for the slate. But we will move on to our next fight. It is Andre Feely at 8,600 taking on Cub Swanson at 7,600. The line on this fight, Feely can be had for minus 210. Cub Swanson at plus 170. And This is an interesting fight. Cub Swanson, of course, is going to have to get on the inside of Andre Fili here. I love Swanson in these types of fights just because I think he's a thinking fighter in the cage. I think he learns how to exploit your weaknesses or what you give him. Hit counters on you, kind of like he did in the Daniel Pineda fight. And he's just always going to be in your face and throwing. And Andre Fili, I can't really get a read on him. One fight he'll look really good. The next one it'll look like he's regressed. I don't know. It's just something. I think it's just at times he's a little bit less defensively responsible than others. And in a fight like this, I think that's really going to hurt him because Cub Swanson is still a sniper. He can still really hurt you in given the right setup, given the right conditions. And, he's sort of they're both veterans. Cub is kind of like the mega veteran. But I don't think that he's really lost anything. I still think he's a scrapper with some decent power for the division. And I think it's going to pay here. So I am taking Cub Swanson. And I believe we start with Joe for this one. Is that right? Joe, how do you see it?
Yeah, I'll take it. That's fine.
Okay,
so
sure.
You guys want to hear a stat?
Please.
Between July 2019 excuse me, and February 2024, which was Fili's last fight. Win, loss, win, loss. No decision, loss, win, loss, win, loss. He's been alternating wins and losses since 2019. Based on that,
right. So what is that?
He's due for a win.
Good indicator. I
Honestly, I don't hate Swanson as a underdog. I do think Fili should have a speed advantage here. I do think Fili, if he wanted to, can use his offensive wrestling here. Fili is coming off of a brutal knockout by Dan Ige. Scored a whopping 3.2 DraftKings points. When he gets finished, he doesn't score much. But he has put up some big scores. And I could see this. Swanson has been part of some really interesting back and forth fights where a lot of significant strikes are thrown. So I could see Swanson being tough enough to hang in and Fili just landing a lot of significant strikes. I could certainly see that happening here. I'm going to pick Fili. I don't hate Swanson as an underdog. I think, if you want to take a few shots, if you want to play him in some lineups, but I think, again, there's an age difference here, right? What is it? Probably about 10 years or so. Swanson, he's really kind of, honestly, I thought he would have been retired by now. I know he's got 3 kids. I know he's got, I think, his own gym. He's a fan favorite. He puts on exciting fights. I love that. His fight against, Korean Wonder Boy was just legendary. It was great. One of the greatest fights you're ever going to watch. But I'm going to pick Fili here. I'm going to say that he bounces back from his last brutal knockout against Ige back in February. And, I don't love 8.6K, but this is the most expensive he's been since, I guess in 2 years. He was 8,300, 7,700, 8,500, 7,800, 7,600, against Ige. So he's the favorite. I might take some flyers on him. I think he could certainly out-volume significantly Cub, or at least Cub can draw him into a fight that would create a lot of significant strikes. And it wouldn't surprise me if he caught him with something and finished him. So I like Fili, but I don't hate taking a few flyers on Cub as a dog on a card where we're looking for dogs.
When you brought up that Doo Ho Choi fight, I got kind of sad because I realized there's a significant portion of the audience who probably doesn't even know who you're talking about at this point. That's how long it's been. But, what may have been, I guess. But as for this fight, we are going to go to Drake next. Drake, how do you see this one?
You guys pretty much summed it up perfectly. I don't got a whole lot left to say on it. I am also on Fili. I think the speed advantage and potential wrestling advantage is going to be too much for him. Yeah, he fought Elkins when Elkins was dying. So, Joey, that means nothing. Yeah, no, I'll have shares of Cub just because he's got that power, and it could, I mean, it could rupture your line if you don't have it. So I just think that Feely, well, the whole, win-loss alternating thing, I looked at that as well. If you believe in that kind of stuff, but I just think the speed advantage from Feely is going to be the difference.
Yeah, definitely can go on either side. I think the one more likely to get KO'd is probably Feely. I wonder if we can agree there. So I think in that sense, maybe Cubs better play, but I do think it is a close fight. But we will move on now.
Wait, Chris, before we move on to the next fight, we have to comment on our friend Joey, since you've been putting him up a couple times. Nothing says Jersey like having your profile picture in a guinea tea. Now, for those of you that don't know what a guinea tea is, that is slang in the Northeast, New Jersey, New York. A guinea tea is what we call those T-shirts without the sleeves. Now, I personally don't own any, and I am half Italian, but like that is real Jersey. Like having a guinea tea, and on a Sunday walking into a bagel shop and asking for Italian egg and cheese, salt, pepper, ketchup. That's pure Jersey right there.
Now I'm just getting hungry.
Guinea tea, bagel sandwich, tail ham, mac and cheese, salt, pepper, ketchup. That's it, man. So Joey, man, loving that guinea tea.
I love the mutton chops we see in that picture myself, but I think there's a lot to love. That's for sure.
We're gonna have Joey come on full time at some point, and like he can come down, and I know we had him on as a guest, but we can
as a guest, and then
we can figure out it like maybe for the next really special card we'll do like a 4-man pod with Joey.
Yeah, we could definitely do 4. I guess I never really considered like how I thought maybe it would clog the screen a little bit, but it'd probably be okay.
Now we could do it.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely do it. But we will now go ahead and move on to the next fight. It is Joe Fire at 9,000 taking on Marc-Andre Barrio at 7,200. Line on this fight, Fire in the minus 300 range, and Barrio coming back at plus 250. And for me, I know we were talking about the bigger dogs on this fight. It's hard to come by. Barrio is one of mine, partially for that reason, but also I think, it's kind of strange to give him this fight after he lost a similar fight with a similar dynamic. I mean, he loses to Jack Hermansson because Hermansson kind of just, waits him out, and he's there and he absorbs the strikes, and in the later rounds, he just pours it on. And Barrio could do that here. I understand this is a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight. But that's Barrio's whole MO. He, sort of leans on you. He roughs you up in the clinch. He short uppercuts, pocket boxing. And if he can take those shots from Fire, and he's only been knocked out, I think twice in his career, but once in the UFC. The once was a starch job from Chidi and Njokuani. And I don't really think Fire is going to do that. So we know that Barrio is incredibly tough. Fire can hit hard. He's explosive. But before that 5-round fight, he hadn't had many 3-round fights go the distance. So I'm still, even though it's not as long as that fight, I still think, wearing on him by the early second round could do some damage. I'm looking for dogs anyway. This is literally a test that we haven't seen him pass yet. We always say that we want to see guys pass tests. Well, he failed that one. Let's see if he can pass this one. And for 7,200, I'm all over it. So I am taking Barrio, but we will see what Drake has to say about that. Drake, how do you see this one?
Yeah, so on my other show with Joey, this was one of the fights that I said I kind of wanted to fade. Pfeiffer, he did fail his test against Hermansson, but he didn't do terrible in that fight. The biggest knock that I have on this fight is it being 3 rounds, and I don't think that there's a finish. So I mean, for it to go 15 minutes and you need another dog, burial is definitely, a great play for cash. And if it's an all favorite card, well, then he's a great play for, any dying line. So 5 or 6 there. But I do think that Pfeiffer is the more talented of the two fighters. I think he has about the same power, and he's definitely got a better ground game. And I think that's where he's going to take this. I think it's going to be takedown and wrestle, and he more than likely just keep him down there. The question is how much work is he going to do on the mat? If he can get him in the ground and pound, it's going to end quickly. But I just think that Pfeiffer is going to control the fight, and it's going to end up in a decision towards him.
Yeah, I actually agree that Fire is probably the more talented fighter. I just think Barrio can get a workman-like decision victory, maybe a split decision victory here. Joe, what about you? How do you see this one?
Okay, so because this is not only a selection show, we look to educate people. I want to throw out a phrase, and that phrase is what's called back class. Right now, I, like many people who have been on this earth for a fairly significant amount of time, started out gambling on horses. And that's a very common term in horses, is you look at back class. So you look at, what has that horse done in the past, and maybe coming off a layoff, or maybe you didn't do so well in your last race, but you fought better competition. We've seen that trend, and we're going to actually see it again on another fight tonight in the UFC, or I should say tomorrow night. That Hermanson, and by the way, I was like on Hermanson in a huge way in the last fight. We saw it with a fighter that maybe wasn't coming off a great or a couple great, showings, and now he's fighting the new guy in the main event, and he's an underdog, right? We saw it last week with Robert Whittaker. Now, Robert Whittaker wasn't quite an underdog, but Alaskorov, and again, I bit too hard on Alaskorov. I had some parlays with Whittaker. But, did it surprise me that fight ended so quickly? Yeah. But, Whittaker, the fighter can't be washed, right? So I think Pfeiffer learned a lot in that fight against Hermanson. Chris, your point about cardio is well taken. He's looked tired in the late rounds of a 3-round fight. I think it was a testament to him that he actually got through all 5 rounds. And if Hermanson was a more aggressive volume-based fighter, he might have actually been able to put him away in rounds 4 or 5. I don't hate Barrio as a dog pick, but I do see this fight as a GPP fight for the reason, and Drake's analysis was pretty right on. If this fight does go late, I could see this being a low-scoring decision, which I think at 9K is not very good for Pfeiffer. However, I could also see Pfeiffer potentially winning in the first round. I see that as a potential outcome of this fight. So for that reason, I want a few shares of Pfeiffer in GPPs. I'm going to pick him to win, but I would not play this fight in cash. And I would play Pfeiffer under the auspices of there being a potential first round finish, which at 9K could score pretty well for him. So my pick's Pfeiffer, but it's not a pick there is some risk, and I don't like this as a cash play, and I like it on DraftKings for GPPs. I don't think I'm going to have that much Barreau. I mean, I think Barreau could potentially win a decision, and if you're going to bet Barreau, I don't see him finishing Pfeiffer, but I think I heard something crazy Barreau by decision is plus 700. If you could find that line, that might be worth a play. Maybe someone can confirm that. What is Barreau by decision? I might throw some money on that, because those are the kind of odds that I like when I'm playing an underdog.
Yeah, let's see if I can't get that for you real quick. Barrio by decision. Fight ends in draw. Fight starts.
Yeah, it's about plus 700.
Plus 700. Thank you, Trey.
Guys, I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. Because if he wins the fight, sorry, I'm getting sick today, man. My daughter, whatever she had, I got. Draft. I don't see him winning by finish. So if he does win this fight, I see it happening by decision.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I mean, I tend to think that if he breaks him down hard enough, he could get a late finish, but I definitely see he's a tough guy, so I definitely could see him hanging on for a decision.
The other thing you could do is you could play Pfeiffer by KO or sub and Barrow by decision.
Right. Yeah, he could spark him out. I mean, Barrio's shown himself to be so tough, but also it has happened fairly recently. So, but I still think of Fire as a guy who's going to go out there and try to get that first round knockout. I just think that's what he's going to do. So if it works, great, and if it doesn't, maybe we have something on the Burrow side. Who knows? But for now, we will move on to the main card. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break for our audio-only podcast listeners, and we will be right back. And we're back. Thank you so much for hanging on with us. We are now going to move into the main card, which starts with a bang with Ian Machado Garry at 8,200, taking on Michael Venom Page at 8,000. Line on this fight, Garry minus 160, Michael Venom Page plus 140. So a little bit of line value there already. I try not to make my analysis based on how much I dislike Michael Venom Page as a fighter, because I very much dislike Michael Venom Page as a fighter. Unfortunately, called that last fight pretty correctly, which was that it was just going to be sort of a boring slog with neither man really wanting to engage here. I mean, MVP is so awkward in his movements, and fighters, don't want to lunge in and get countered. I think Ian Garry is going to be a little different. I think he's going to fight a little faster. Ian Garry, 6.23 significant strikes landed per minute. I don't have comparative records, but that's got to be up there for tops in the company, particularly with how many fights he has now. And Page is, in Bellator, he always had a problem with wrestlers. A lot of times didn't lead to a loss just because the wrestlers were pure wrestlers who couldn't really do anything else. And so when he would get up, he would then do enough to win those rounds or go back and get a knockout. Ian Garry has a functional enough wrestling game, but is a dangerous striker, which I think makes him a pretty bad matchup for MVP into this spot. MVP, as we've seen, can really throw some creative and powerful single strikes. But unless Ian Garry gets caught, I just think he can do too many things with too many weapons that MVP can't. So I am going to go ahead and, to my delight, pick Ian Garry here. But we will see how Drake wants to kick us off on the main card. How do you see this fight?
Yeah, you summed it up really well. I have Garry. This is another fight that I kind of want to fade because it's another one where I don't see a finish happening. My words in my other show is I feel like MVP came to kind of just make money, a little bit of money, and kind of showboat and talk like he did in his last fight with Holland. And Gary's here to win. And I think that's the difference in this fight for me, is that Garry is going to put out a lot more volume, and he has at a disadvantage when it comes to reach, but I do think he solves that rather quickly. And, I don't think that he puts MVP away, but I do think that he wins a unanimous decision.
Yeah, I do too. And you know what? They're so close that if he does use that wrestling, I think at least the score can be, adequate enough. Maybe he gets his 90 to 93, and you're like, okay, depending on the card, we'll take that. But Joe, what about you? How do you see the first fight on the main card?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Garry as well. I don't like the guy. I think his wife is a smoke show. Really. I don't love the guy. But everything you said about Page, everything Drake said about Page is true. I mean, didn't he take a bare knuckle fight against Mike Perry? I mean,
and he lost.
I think the UFC barely beat out so sorry, guys, PFL to get him. So, I think Barry, I think it's going to be an interesting fight because what are they calling Michael Venom Page? Like Stephen Wonderboy Light, karate style. I think it could be a very boring fight. I could see Garry getting frustrated. But I'm going to pick him for the win. I don't know if Holland was starstruck. He just had a really bad game plan against MVP. So I'll take Garry here. I don't know how much I love this fight for DraftKings, but as a winner pick, I'll take Garry.
Yeah, I just hope it happens, because if MVP scrapes by with another decision because he landed like the 5 biggest strikes of the fight, and then we have to see more of this on pay-per-view main cards, I'm really not going to be happy. So not only do I think Ian Garry is going to win, I really, really hope he does. But we're going to move on now down the main card, and the next fight up is a fight that we've been referencing pretty heavily because of the line value that you will see here. It is Mayra Bueno Silva at 8,800 taking on Macy Chiasson at 7,400. Line on this fight, as you may have imagined, well, in most places I see, is a pick'em. As high as it gets for Bueno Silva is minus 115, but the most I see is minus 110s across the board on the pick'em. And it's a strange thing. I mean, you know the Macy Chiasson win condition. It is use her size, use her wrestling, and just get on top. And we saw Raquel Pennington really, again, this was a 5-round fight, and this one was not. This one is not, rather. But we really saw Raquel Pennington wear Mayra Bueno Silva down, and just really sort of take her gas away in that fight. And I think Chiasson's got the size and strength to do the same thing. Mayra Bueno Silva's game plan is she really likes to get in the face of her opponents, really likes to throw volume. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of tie-up scenarios here for Macy Chiasson. She's going to be very highly owned because of the line value we spoke of and the price. But Mayra Bueno Silva doesn't really get amazing scores when she wins. She's not really a knockout threat. She had the one fluky, I don't want to say fluky, but sort of opportunistic, it may be a better word, sub against Holly Holm. But otherwise, I don't think she's much of a finisher. I'm going to go with Chiasson here. I think she scores better when she wins, and I think she has better conditions to win. So I am on Chiasson. But we will start with Drake on this one. Drake, how do you see this fight?
Yeah, I'm with you. She is my favorite dog on the card, which, like I mentioned before, Silva's my only other one. So I'm not really big on dogs. I was big on Chiasson as soon as this got released. The biggest reason being that size advantage is huge, and we saw MBS struggle with, like you mentioned, Pennington, and I think it's just going to be more of the same. I can't see a way Silva wins this fight unless she can somehow get to the back of Chiasson. And even if she does, that we've seen it all the time, it's really hard to submit somebody that is that much longer than you. So I really like Chiasson in this fight. I think she wins, and I think she scores probably close to 100 at 7,400.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. She does score very well in her wins because they are grappling based. I think 6 of her 7 wins are over 90 points. I believe that's accurate. Someone could check that. But in any case, if she does win, look for a lot of that grappling wrestling points. Joe, how do you see this one?
So let's talk about the elephant in the room. That's the incredible amount of line value in Macy Chiasson. At minus 110 at 7.4K, I would be shocked. And again, I have a gentleman's wager with Brett Apley, good friend of mine. I am not an ownership guy. I should put that out on the table. I am not great at predicting ownership. However, Brett feels that Chiasson is only going to be 25% owned. I think she's going to be closer to 60% owned. I think she's going to be the highest owned fighter on the slate. There are people out there that play MMA, that MMA DFS, that don't really understand MMA, but just follow line value. Anybody who follows line value and just plays that way, Chiasson's going to be a free square. 7.4K at minus 110. I mean, look, the bet with Brett is that whoever's closer wins. So she's 45% owned, as you guys seem to think.
Yeah.
I'll win that bet by 5% because it's whoever's closest to the real number. I honestly think she's going to be higher. I think she's going to be at least 50%, if not higher. So And then thinking about the fight, like my original pick for RotoWire was MBS. And I kind of looked at competition. And I think that when she was flagged by USADA, I think it was for like Ritalin or something like that. It wasn't like an anabolic steroid. But Chisone has really been practicing jiu-jitsu. And I certainly see, Chastone is not even being like a fish out of water on the ground. And when I was just looking at this fight and looking at the odds, I'm like, what the hell happened here? Like, and there are people that I'm corresponding with one guy on Twitter who actually arbed this. He completely arbed this fight. I mean, I think he got Chastone at like plus 160 or plus 160 or plus 175 or something like that. And he got, minus 105 on Buenos Silva. And, he's completely arbed the fight.
Right.
And as long as you can get enough down to make it worthwhile, that's an absolute great play. I'm going to flip my pick here. Sorry, Jake. I originally had MBS for RotoWire. I do think Chisone has got a path to victory here. I think she can muscle Buenos Silva. I don't think she's a fish out of water on the ground. I probably see this fight going to decision. And I don't think it's going to be a super high scoring fight. But honestly, as close to a lock in cash as you could probably get at 7.4K. And I think she's going to be very highly owned in GPPs just because she fits. Like, you could, if there's another dog that I like, I'm not really sure if Chris and Drake like, at 7.8K. And if you use Chasson and my guy at 7.8K, you could really build some really interesting lineups, which that's going to be my focus is Chasson and, how do we say T-City? And T-City is the back class I was talking about earlier, by the way. So that's what's going to happen here. I'm going with Chasson.
All right. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I would have liked if you would have kept that because I don't think you were probably the only one. I didn't look, but I would imagine that you were. And now we are completely MBS-less. And it would be nice to have that variety, but I respect your conviction of changing the pick. So we will go ahead and move on. It is Roman Dolidze at 8,400 taking on Anthony Smith, 7,800. This fight went through many twists and turns. Anthony Smith was not one of the original fighters in it, but he remains to now fight Dolidze, who is himself a replacement for a fighter. All of that is to say that I think I'm going to stay with my prediction that has been with the last couple of Anthony Smith fights, some good, some bad, and that is that he gets knocked out. He just looks he's always been foot slow, and he just looks so uncomfortable on his feet now. In that last fight with Petrino, if Petrino would have kept it on the feet, he would have won. He looked so uncomfortable. He telegraphs the shot. He just gives Anthony Smith all day to line up his neck, then goes for it anyway, and he chokes him. And now he's not going to be able to grapple that opportunistically, I should say, with Dolidze. Dolidze is very good on the ground, very tricky. He's not just going to be able to take it there and have a huge advantage the way he was able to do with Spawn and then with Petrino. And I think because of that, Smith isn't going to get it to the ground, and Dolidze is just going to throw his big hammers in the pocket and knock out Anthony Smith. That's kind of how I see this fight going. The more Anthony Smith moves on, I mean, he keeps talking delusional about Alex Pereira and all this other stuff, but he just looks hopeless at the start of every fight, and he kind of has to meme his way into a victory. I don't think that's going to happen here. My pick is Roman Dolidze, and I believe we will start with Joe here. Joe, how do you see this one?
Yeah, I'm on Dolidze as well. I mean, this is essentially a short notice fight for both fighters. I mean, the original fight was supposed to be Carlos Ulberg against Jamal Hill. Then it was Carlos Ulberg against Anthony Smith. Now it's Anthony Smith against Roman Dolidze. Now, I don't know why Ulberg pulled out. I think he pulled out probably because he had nothing to gain by beating Anthony Smith. I think that was probably a management decision. I don't think he was actually hurt. which is kind of curious because, 303 is a pretty high profile card, unless he's like lobbying for a spot on UFC Perth, which is coming up, and then he gets to fight in Australia. So even though he's from New Zealand. So yeah, I'm gonna take Roman Dolidze here. I mean, I think he just had a baby. His wife just had a baby. He looks in pretty good shape. I mean, I thought he actually beat Marvin Vettori, a few fights back. For those of you that don't know, if you're really into narrative, Roman Dolidze is the guy that Cheyenne buys, now Cheyenne Lipness, left her husband JP buys for. Now I don't know if if she's the one that had the baby or like what's going on. I don't follow social media that much, but if anyone knows, it would kind of be interesting narrative. But he looks in shape, and again, I think he could spark. He's gonna throw the harder shots. I don't think he's a fish out of water on the ground. He's got some wrestling in his back pocket. I kind of like him wherever this fight goes. I mean, obviously Smith can get nasty with maybe a guillotine choke of some sort, but I think Dolidze is a decent wrestler and is not going to let that happen. So I like Roman Dolidze here, and I think this is attractively priced. What's he, 8.4K? I think this is a pretty good number on him against Anthony Smith. I wouldn't kill anyone if they wanted to have a few shots on Smith, purely GPPs. This fight is a GPP fight. So I'll go with Roman Dolidze.
Yeah, I will go on a limb and say I will not have any shots of Anthony Smith, but that is just me. And Drake, we're still going to you, yes? Did we go to you yet? No. Okay, sir. What do you got?
Dolidze is probably my favorite play on the slate.
Yeah.
So if you go back and you look at Dolidze's, where he started, 205 is his natural weight. This is where he fought coming up, and he didn't go down to 185 until really he got into the UFC. So 205 is natural for him, and I cannot wait to see him just stomp all over Anthony Smith so Anthony Smith can finally shut up.
Yeah, really. Absolutely. The guy is just going nuts. I mean, but I do say, like, the more I think about it, like, he should have taken the DQ win against Jones just because it would have been so funny to have Anthony Smith as the light heavyweight champion. It would have been like when Chael was walking around with the fake belt, only for real. That's how it would have felt. But I think you have to take the Dolidze here. Without the jiu-jitsu to fall back on, I just don't see how Anthony Smith wins a fight in the year of our Lord 2024. So I think Dolidze has to be the play. And now we will move on to the aforementioned co-main event, who Joe was so keen to give you his pick in that one. It is Diego Lopes at 8,400 taking on Brian T. City Ortega at 7,800. The line on this one is Lopes at minus 140, Ortega coming back at plus 120. And we should note that a little bit of a weird situation in this fight. Apparently, Brian Ortega was bulking up for a lightweight fight, and Diego, before he got this fight, that is, and so he decided he wasn't going to try to cut down, and so they let Lopes and his team know in the middle of the week that the fight was going to be just at 155. So this is now a lightweight fight. Obviously, that favors Ortega some in that he's going to be the guy who wants to get this fight to the ground, and he's going to be the heavier man wanting to be a wrestler. I honestly don't think it matters all that much, and I'll tell you why. Brian Ortega, we saw him pull his latest disappearing act where he gets beaten up and then outlasts and then uses his jiu-jitsu against Yair Rodriguez. But similar to the Anthony Smith fight, and not exactly because no one denies that Brian Ortega is really good at jiu-jitsu, but Diego Lopes is pretty good too. And Brian Ortega is not just going to be able to run him over there. It's not going to be a scenario that's binary where it's like, well, he was getting beaten up, but now he's got it on the ground. And so, no, the way it shakes out is I still give Brian Ortega the advantage on the ground, but not nearly as wide as the one that Diego Lopes has on the feet. and that is a very bad combination for Brian Ortega. I think Ortega just gets beaten up here. If he goes to the ground, we're going to see some exciting scrambles. We're going to see a lot of good stuff. I don't think he can tap Diego Lopes. I don't see it happening. So I think Lopes is going to knock him out. Lopes is actually really one of my favorite plays for a favorite on the card just because he's so reasonably priced. I think a lot of people are going to be lured into Ortega because of the name, because of the jiu-jitsu, because of the high-level experience, etc., etc. I just don't think it works here. I'm going Lopes in a heavy way. And because Joe already gave us his pick, and I'm sure he's got a good diatribe to go along with it, we're going to wait for him. We're going to go to him second. So, Drake, how you seeing this one?
I am also all over Lopes for a multitude of reasons, some of which you stated. One thing I do not agree with you with, and there's people that are not going to agree with me, I do not think that Ortega has the advantage on the mat.
Oh.
I really don't. We have yet to see Lopez's ground game. You have to go back and watch his other fights. So if you go watch his fights in Lux or anything before that, there is a reason that him and all of his family are, we talked about it, his last fight against Yusuf, his great uncle or his uncle, whatever it is, he's a coral belt. Yeah. This is a family of BJJ practitioners, and if this goes to the mat, watch what happens. That's all I got to say. I do not see Ortega winning this fight anywhere. I have Lopes all day.
Well, now I want to see the fight go to the mat. But I was thinking, I was being generous by saying it's pretty close on the mat, but Drake has a very different opinion. And now I actually want to see some scrambles. But we will go to Joe for the dissenting opinion. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so here's the back class angle, right? Like Lopes has really fought other than, and again, he's had an impressive run in the UFC. I'll give him that. But his prior fights have been crushing cans. They really have. I mean, those are second-rate organizations, not even top-tier organizations. And anytime he stepped up to fight a better quality fighter, he did not do well. Yes, the Coral Belt, I know all about his family lineage. I do think that there is jiu-jitsu and there is MMA jiu-jitsu. And I still believe that Brian Ortega has better MMA jiu-jitsu, and he's more opportunistic. Look, neither one of these guys are world-class strikers. I think Ortega is a better wrestler. He's certainly had far better, again, using my back class angle, far better back class. And as an underdog in this fight, I mean, look, you got Hermanson as an underdog. You got Whitaker as a slight favorite against Alaskarov. You've got a Brian Ortega, and actually, I like this fight more at lightweight. You got him who was bulking up, who didn't have a bad weight cut, who was bulking up to fight it at 155. Makes me like him more. Not to say I'm not going to have shares of Lopes. I'm going to have shares. He's had an impressive run in the UFC, but I think this is his Waterloo. I mean, this is where he says, okay, now, again, if he takes Brian Ortega and he wins this fight convincingly, I'll buy all the hype. I really will. I'm just following my back class theory here. And I'm not saying it always works, but it worked with Whitaker. It worked with Hermanson. I'm getting Brian Ortega as an underdog. I mean, seriously, like Yair Rodriguez, he was an underdog against Yair Rodriguez. Who has fought the better competition by far? I mean, shit, Brian Ortega, if he's healthy, and it seems like he is, didn't have to do a big weight cut because this fight is at 155. I like him. I like the narrative. I like the fight. I would be happy to be proven wrong, but I'm going with Brian Ortega here.
Well, now I just want to see. I want to see those ground exchanges.
Actually, more important though, than this fight is, Joey with the Guinea tea. Does he have tats on each arm too? He does.
Can we see it in this?
I know he's got one for sure, and it's his freaking Philadelphia Eagle tattoo. So the whole fly Eagles fly thing.
So he's got that tattooed on his
bicep. Yeah.
Does he realize how expensive those are and painful they are to remove?
Why would you need to remove it? I'm covered.
Okay, Joey. I speaking as a person, look, I have nothing against tattoos. I've never gotten one. I have nothing against them, but like there are some tattoos that you get and people don't think about how they're going to look as they get older.
Who cares about that?
So
live fast, I always say. But it is definitely going to be an interesting dynamic on the ground.
Wait, Chris, you have a tattoo?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was excited for a minute.
That would be if I did, I wouldn't show you. But no, I do not. Leave you in suspense. But getting back to the fight, I do think it is very interesting, the dynamic on the ground, because it'll be one of you is going to be very wrong. So I'm excited to see that. Like the second,
I will say I did have Ortega against Yair. And that pick almost went backwards until Ortega saved it in the final minutes. But
yeah, as soon as this hits the ground, it's either going to be, if it's a blowout, Joe's mouth is going to be mouthing some choice words, and if it's if Ortega gets the upper hand, Drake is going to be. And I'm just in this one, I'm just sitting in the gallery throwing peanuts. I don't really have a dog in the fight, but it will be interesting to see. And I am very keen to see it. Okay, but now we will go to the main event. It is the rematch between Alex Pereira at 8,500 and Jiri Prochazka at 7,700. Line on the main event is -145 for Pereira and +125 for Jiri Prochazka. And, I don't really see this one going much different than the first fight did. It's just a bad matchup for Procházka because he's light on defense. He just wants to get in your face and throw volume. And Pereira has a lot of power and is a really good counter puncher. And that is just not a great situation for this. And I think Procházka knows that, which is why he did so much wrestling in the first fight. And I actually think he might do less wrestling this time, which is a mistake, because the way he got KO'd in the first fight was he went for the bad shot. He was on his knees, and he just got elbowed into oblivion, which was a totally fine stoppage, no matter what he wants to say in retrospect. So I think Pereira just has too many advantages here. There's just no way that Jiri's going to be able to wrestle him for 5 rounds. I don't buy it, without either A, him getting tired, because that's not what he does, or B, him making some other mistake and allowing himself to be vulnerable once again. I just think Pereira has way too many advantages here. So I had Jiri in the last fight against Alexander Rakic there, but this is just not ever going to be a good style matchup for him, I do not think. And this time we were going to start with Joe to kick us off. What do you feel about the main event?
Yeah, I see this fight essentially going the same way. I really do. The only thing that concerned me, excuse me, damn, what a bad time to get sick. The only thing that concerned me was at the end of the last fight, I noticed that Pereira seemed to have hurt his foot, and I haven't heard anything about that. I haven't heard any narrative about him having any injury. This is a pretty quick turn time for Pereira. Good question. Has Pereira got injuries, right?
Yep. Speak of
that's
it.
That's my concern. Absent that, I don't see this fight going any differently. I see Pereira, getting the win by finish. He's shown that he could go the distance if he has to. Look, I'll have some shares of Jiri. I mean, I certainly will. I mean, he's, I see this as kind of a GPP fight mostly. I mean, you always want some exposure to the main event in cash, just because it's a 5-round fight, and even in a loss, you could get some points. But I do see this more as a GPP main event. I don't see this. I wouldn't stack this in cash at all. And if you want to play this in cash, I would probably lean more towards Pereira. One, because I like him to win the fight. So I like Pereira here. I will have shares of Jiri and in my GPP 150, but give me Pereira.
Yeah, I think you have to have shares, I think, just because of how wild Jiri is and what he can do with his offense. But as I said, I just don't think it's a good matchup. But what does Drake think? Drake, what do you think of the main event?
Drake thinks that it is also a terrible matchup for Jiri.
Yeah.
So Joey is on Jiri, and I think he's an idiot, but that's besides the point. Jiri fights so unorthodox, and that's what throws off so many fighters. And, he comes at him with all these spinnings and rolling and whatever the hell he feels like doing in the ring. He just does it. I think him and Michelle Pereira would be a good fight.
Yeah.
But Pereira, we saw it in the Jamal Hill fight. He is so composed in the octagon. There, nothing phases him. And the difference in this fight is going to be his kickboxing. I don't see Jiri having any success, especially if he comes out as slow as he did again in that Rakic fight. He had 16 strikes in that first round. And I thought he was going to end up blowing it because he just wasn't doing anything. He does that against Alex Pereira, and he's just going to be toast. And the kickboxing, like I said, is going to be all the difference. I think Pereira wins by knockout again.
Yeah, those leg kicks. If he waits too long, those leg kicks are even going to be more brutal. If he goes too fast, he's going to get countered. So there really is no good avenue for Jiri except for the wrestling, and he's not a wrestler. So that doesn't lead to some any good things. I think Pereira is the clear pick as well. That will end the fight card, ladies and gentlemen, but we are not quite done yet. It is time for hot takes. If you're new to the show, this is where we take a line or something about the line, a prop, what have you, one of the fights that we feel is getting too much in the plus money, is too juiced, and we give it to you as something that can reasonably come in. If you put yours in the chat, as the fellas here are saying theirs, I will post it, and we will talk about it as well. Guys, is there any hot takes for us?
Yeah, so here's what I'm going to do, guys, and you could size this bet in any way that you're most comfortable if I could get through this. So I'm going to take, and this is two bets on the same fight. I'm going to take Barreau to win by decision at plus 700. I'm going to put $125 on that play, which will get me back $1,000. Now, what I'm also doing is I am playing at minus 225 Joe Pfeiffer to win by KO or decision. Now, if that hits, I get $100 back. I essentially lose $25, right? If Barreau does win by decision, right, I get $1,000, minus the $350 that I bet. Do the math, right? So that is the play I'm making. You guys can, do your own kind of size it however you like to size it. But look, obviously I can lose by winning by submission, which I honestly don't seem likely. I see him winning by either knockout or decision. Or I could, you can decide if you really want some extra safety. You could just pay the win line, which I think is 305 is the win line, and get a little bit less juice back. Then you're betting 405 to get, to win the 1,000 on Barreau, minus what you bet, so you could play that way too. That's my hot take.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like how thought out that is, and I like some of the protection as well. Drake, do you have a hot take for us?
So it's just, and this is a hot take for sure. This is a 2-part parlay. It's about plus 1,800, and it's both Jillian Robertson and Joe Pfeiffer to win by submission.
Wow, what's the number on that again?
It's about plus 1,800.
Wow. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Two things that I think are in the ballpark. One maybe more so than the other, but that's why you get the number, and definitely something to take a swing at.
Wow, you like Pfeiffer by submission. I may have to now change that to just doing the straight bet on Pfeiffer.
You know better than to do that, though.
So I don't get screwed. No, I mean, I'm still going to play the Barreau by decision, but instead of laying 225 to do it by knockout or decision, I just lay the 300 or the
I
305.
like how
and do
much
it that way.
direct conflict you guys have this week. Usually it's me and Drake, but this time I can just sort of sit and watch.
Interesting.
It's a different experience.
We'll see how it goes.
Mine is not going to be quite as adventurous, but I am going to say that Diego Lopes wins the fight against Brian Ortega by knockout. So that is, let's see, the last time I saw it was plus 550. So, oh no, I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. That's Ortega's number, actually. Where's Lopez's number? Where did I see it? Come on.
It's about plus 275.
Okay, 275. So not really that hot. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we'll also do as a supplement. We will do Burrow knocking out Joe Pfeiffer as the secondary. So has that. I'll give you 2 this week because the plus 275 is not all that hot. But that will be it for us. I do not see anything in the chat, so you must just be all blown away by the majesty of our picks there, which is quite understandable. But seriously, guys, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. Every show that you guys show up and give us support. If you would, go to the RotoWire page, YouTube page, give us a like and a follow there. It helps us. Subscribe. Follow all of us on our Twitter accounts. We are always talking during the fight. We are talking amongst ourselves when the fights too. Hopefully not getting too rough depending on what happens. But that is going to be it for us. Thank you all so much once again. We will see you next time. And until then, best of luck in your contests.
Peace.